Percy with an early run, he's onside this time! It's 1-1! Andre Schürrle, it's 7! It's Mario Götze! What a goal! What a goal to win a World Cup!
Hello and welcome back to the Beermat World Cup podcast. We are now at the stage where we're trying to enjoy the football and use it as a distraction from the fact that there are only 3 big games left. 4 if you count the third place playoff, but no one really does. We had the remaining 2 quarterfinals today, and I'm recording this well later than I normally would because it's been that kind of day. I'm going to go back to earlier on this evening, a game that went to extra time and penalties. The hosts, Russia, going out to Croatia after a 2-2 draw. And do you know what? I've got to hold my hands up here, and I've been very negative toward Russia for most of this tournament. And if nothing else in this game, aside from some very bizarre substitutions and decisions from the manager, it goes to show you what a squad that's brought together, a squad that's got a really good morale, a squad that has a purpose. And I think professional pride goes a very long way, because when a team's very low, whether it be in terms of confidence or even ability, that is the distinction between a team that just gets relegated to like Villa or Sunderland over the last couple of Premier League years. And I'm not suggesting that Russia were anywhere near that, but they were the second lowest ranked team in the tournament, and so it could have been very easy for things to go very badly wrong for them. And they managed to do that thing of coming together and having players that haven't done loads on the global stage, combined with a few others which are up and coming, and suddenly like everything looks a lot better for Russia, certainly than it did in the Euros when they were blown apart in the last group game by Wales. And when Cheryshev blams that one in for the first goal, you will start to wonder, could this Russia side go all the way? I mean, getting to the final would have been a hell of a spectacle, and especially for the crowd, which was just encouraged, I was going to say manipulated, but that was really bad, encouraged by the coach and the team all night, and continued to put just as much effort in as the players did on the pitch. Croatia get back into the game relatively quickly. It's been a sort of theme actually in this World Cup that I think we've got to the point now where the underdog taking the lead surprises us so little that we just get back onto the plan A straight away, which is the same with the ironically enough Croatia-Denmark game, because they had to equalise very quickly afterwards as well. And the sheer amount of twists and turns that these games continue to take, it's quite fascinating, and these knockout games are meant to be a bit tight than this. And for a lot of the game, it was, as you'd expect, it was edgy. It was, you wonder who was going to find the extra gear, and Croatia have that extra gear in players, but this is the second game in a row now where they've not really shown it. The attacking sense, I know there was a change in shape and formation, and Kramaric, who gets the equaliser, is on from the start, but it didn't really look like clicking. And Mandzukic, who for a good few years now has been very reliable, very good forward for Croatia, just doesn't look like anything. And I'm not necessarily putting the blame on him, because I think it stems from this midfield. And I'm not sure if this is circumstantial, I'm not sure if this is the opposition's doing. But what I find when I've seen certainly the Denmark game and the Russia game, a lot of direct negating the midfield play by both Russia and Denmark. And I would actually include the way Croatia have been playing. They don't necessarily go through midfield as often as you'd think. And obviously with the kind of forward line they have, you target supply, all that, you think that they are sort of primed to go direct. But if you've got the likes of Rakitic and Modric and Perisic in and around, why wouldn't you utilise that a bit better than they have? The thing for Croatia, though, is they have actually managed to get through on the penalty shootout. And for as much as the whole talk has been of a other side that we'll come to, and how this is their best chance in God knows how many years, and will be their best chance for who knows how many years, the same applies to Croatia. And I think before the tournament, and certainly after the group stage, before the knockout round started, the worry for me for Croatia was that they had this dark horse tag and they trip over the first hurdle. Now that they haven't tripped over the first hurdle, which was Denmark, now they've got through that, and now they've got through this. Yes, I'm not seeing loads of encouraging signs from them, but I do wonder whether it's like simply a case of we're still here, and if we were going to fall away, we would have fallen away by now. No one will really chastise them too much if they fail to win the tournament from here, but it's just that whole idea of opportunity knocking and when it will come again. And moving on then to a game that was a lot actually less interesting in a way, which I think says a lot more about the way the side has progressed through the tournament. Sweden 0, England 2. England into the World Cup semi-final for the first time since 1990, and I was just a twinkle in. I was born by then. Yeah, I was alive. I'm old. I'm well old. I don't remember it. I was too young, but still, I was there. Not quite there. Like, I know, like, we get young people onto the pitch and this is a young team, but me as a 4-year-old was not in the Italian 90 side. Right, I need to get this out of the way first. The ignorance surrounding Raheem Sterling specifically, and I would even argue the general footballing ignorance of certain sections of the England fan base, is really threatening to derail this. I went on an impassioned rant last time about how I really want this side to do well in spite of itself or in spite of other aspects, and I really want people that I am close to see something special. It doesn't move me in the same way, it doesn't sort of grab me in the same way. It's hard to sort of tangibly put my finger on it, but it just doesn't feel the same as Liverpool Champions League run earlier on this year. That gave me, like, I felt 10 foot tall after every game. I felt galvanised for weeks. It was fuel for the next game. Whereas this, for as much as I've built up some good credit throughout this tournament, without going into too much detail, that was nearly wiped out by one ignorant dickhead this afternoon. So, yeah. In regard to Raheem Sterling, if I was going to say right wing, but even that feels a bit harsh. If the Daily Mail proportion, if the red top proportion, if the awful proportion of this fan base seems to have even permeates the whole ethos of this England side, it all will fall apart. In a weird way, like, if these games were taking place in this country, the atmosphere would feel better in some instances, but worse in others. I find it frustrating that people that watch football can come up with such horrendous opinions, and it's usually people that don't follow football week in, week out. And I'm not even talking about the press's treatment of Sterling at this time. I believe he was downvoted or voted at the very bottom of the BBC's player rating for the game, which is horseshit. Did he have a great game? No. I'm not suggesting he's a world beater. He is a player with a lot of really good attributes. The primary one of those is pace, and he's stretching a Sweden side that didn't want to be moved and has 6-foot defenders, so there's no point in just looping aimless crosses into the box as soon as you get the ball, especially when there's only 2 England players in the box most of the time. So the idea that he's playing shit is ludicrous. He's doing a job. Should he do better in certain moments? Absolutely. I've never wanted a player to succeed more on an international stage. If he scores the winner in either the semi or the final, maybe that will go some way to bringing all this back. Maybe that will go some way to me actually celebrating rather than just looking around at, I don't know, a minority of those around me when I'm watching these games and thinking, you don't deserve to be happy, you're actively ruining this. And when you see some of the stuff of, like, people jumping on ambulances and these dickheads running into IKEA, oh, do you have a fucking brain cell to rub between you? You hurt me. Football is so good, and this tournament has been so good, but all of this fucking isn't. Jesus. Right, on to the game itself. It was and has been a really weird dynamic in the sense of there's a lot of not as good players as you'd expect, certainly from past England sides, that are playing so far above their station. It's unreal. Like, when you've got defenders from, like, the turn of the century of Rio Ferdinand, Jamie Carragher, John Terry, that sort of back three of a back two, and in and around like 2004, 5, 6, maybe up to even 7, 8. These are the best defenders in Europe. And we've got Harry Maguire and John Stones. And not only are they not on that level, and performing so far above what they should be. Harry Maguire specifically is performing incredibly well, and John Stones as well is doing fantastically. But then on top of that, they're scoring goals. This is madness. This is hilarious. And Harry Maguire's header, set piece once again. It's been the theme of the tournament. And from then on, I mean, it was a bit of a feeling out process, I think is the easiest way to say that up until that point. But after the first goal, there was only ever really going to be one winner. The second goal, Dele Alli, again, very similar, not set piece, but very similar, using the sort of space and width. And I know I said about like not just whipping balls aimlessly into the box. This isn't aimlessly. I think there was a 3v2 situation at the back. Bear in mind that it's been a good few hours since I've seen this game, so pardon me if my numbers aren't exactly correct. He scores, he's done nothing, let's face it, most of the tournament. And I know he's carrying a knock, so I don't want to hold it against him too much. So in that regard, you would rather have a player that's not at 100% or not even performing at 100%, still scoring goals, than someone who is on the top of their game and can get nowhere near it. Someone was telling me all game about how Frank Lampard in the last World Cup was the player with the most shots off target and least goals. And there's a difference between an approach of just absolutely spamming the goal as often as you can, and this England side who seem to favour a lot more patient build-up, which does seem to frustrate the, I really wanted to say uneducated masses there, but that's so snobbery. Fuck it, it's my podcast. The uneducated masses that, let's say, don't necessarily support a massive team and aren't used to this idea that, like, handed by Southgate down from the pages of the playbooks of Guardiola, Pochettino and Jurgen Klopp. And if you can't enjoy it, if you can't enjoy this, if you can't enjoy this England side and everything that entails, the camaraderie, the feel-good factor, the youthful exuberance, the idea that because of how young this side is, whatever happens from now on in, we go into the next one happy again. We go into the next one optimistic again. We go into the next one free from the shackles of one Roy Hodgson, who spent 6 years telling us we were absolutely dog shit. We weren't. We never were. All that's happened in this magical transformation over the last 8 years, maybe, is we had really good players under a really good coach and it didn't work. We got in the Hodge and then he spent so much time doing what he does, which is getting 40 points in a good team, shit team, great team. He made us think that Costa Rica were as good as us, and now we're back to where we were before all this. That's all it is. And we've had the favourable draws. That's why dynamic has shifted. Instead of going from quarterfinals, which is what we would have expected back in like 06 or 2010, to now, quarterfinals is like, oh hello. But semi-finals is beyond all expectations, full stop. But now that it's here, you've got 4 teams left. And barring maybe France, everyone else is going, we could win this. Everyone else is going, we want to win this so badly. And everything I'm saying about that applies to France. But what you've got is 3 other teams, 2 of which may never get a sniff ever again. At least one of those 3 teams will get to the final. We know this already. Croatia or England, one of them's going to the final. And the way this is set up, I actually quite like the dynamic of the 2 games that are left. And I actually quite like the football that we've yet to see, the twists that we've yet to see. We've seen so much to get to this point, and so much of this tournament has been the expected versus the unexpected, and even in the expected we get there not necessarily the way we expected to. And so we now turn our attentions to Tuesday and Wednesday, 2 semi-finals, 1 final. All 4 teams are 180 minutes minus extra time and penalties away from history. Technically, all 4 teams are historical because every single thing is actual history in and of itself. But let's put it this way. They're 2 games away from the stuff of legends. They're 2 games away from being spoke about in the same hushed tones as those lads from 66. And I don't just apply that to England. I apply that to Belgium and I apply that to Croatia, because the way we speak about, or the way this country as a whole speaks about Jeff Hurst and Bobby Moore and all that, that applies to Luka Modric, that applies to Romelu Lukaku. Luka Modric, out of nowhere, having won the European Cup, legitimately has a chance. And when I say out of nowhere, I mean that this is how little we pay attention to him, not that he's not been doing it. But he has a legitimate chance to win the Ballon d'Or here. This is how important this is to him and to the nation of Croatia. Of like, the last time England were in a World Cup semi-final, Croatia didn't exist. So there's so much on the line. There's so much that we're going to look back on in 4 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years and go, that was amazing. Because there's so much that's already happened that we will look back on and go, that's amazing. All stories, if they are to be remembered as great stories, need a fantastic ending. I really hope in the 3 games that remain that we get that ending.